Revenge films.
I'm Mike, an office worker living with my wife and daughter. To others, we might appear to be an ordinary family, but my daughter and I aren't biologically related. She's my wife's child from a previous relationship. I'm her stepfather. Still, having raised her for 20 years since she was 5 years old, she's like my own daughter to me. On the day of her 25th birthday, she said she had something important to talk about and called my wife and me into the living room, looking nervous, and said,
I'm thinking of getting married.
The thought of her, who had always been a part of our daily lives, leaving our home made it hard for me to fully celebrate her engagement. Still, my desire to warmly send her off toward her future happiness was stronger. So with a smile, I said, "Congratulations!" And her face lit up as she replied,
Thank you.
However, the thought of living with just my wife from now on sparked a growing sense of unease. She often spends time away from home, and ever since we got married, she has frequently asked me to look after her daughter so she could go out. With many friends and a strong focus on her social life, I always tried to send her off with a smile. She doesn't go out every week, but there's always that one night once a month where she stays out until midnight. I initially thought she was meeting her female friend and didn't give it much thought, but over time, I began to feel distrust. When I casually asked who she was meeting, she said,
Oh, my friend from high school.
Without mentioning a name or providing any further details. Even that alone seemed suspicious, and meeting the same person regularly at the end of every month for years? Are they really just friends? So this is why I can't imagine living peacefully with my wife from now on. As I wrestled with my concerns and my daughter's wedding day drew closer, my wife mentioned one day that she was going on an overnight trip. I was suspicious at first, but when she said she was going with our daughter, I felt relieved. She said they wanted to have a relaxed trip together before the wedding. So I gave them some money and sent them off with the words, "Relax and enjoy yourselves." 2 days later, when they returned, my daughter avoided making eye contact with me and went straight to her room. I asked my wife, "Did something happen?" worried. But she replied,
She's probably just tired.
So maybe I was just overthinking. But even after that, I knew she was avoiding me, which was sad. A week after their trip, my wife said,
I have something important to talk about.
And called me to the living room. Looking uncomfortable, she said,
It's about the wedding.
I asked, "What about it? Is everything okay?" And she replied,
It's best if you don't attend her wedding because her biological father will be there instead, so...
Being shocked at this, I said, "What? After I've raised her for 20 years? Are you serious?" She responded,
She also said she wants her real dad to come.
I couldn't believe it. From what I'd heard, her biological father never held a stable job, was addicted to gambling, and had accumulated a large amount of debt which led to divorce. She also used to always tell me that she was glad to have me as her father instead of him. And whenever my wife was out, we often spent time together, and we were so close that people envied how well we got along. That's why I couldn't believe she'd say she wanted her biological father there instead of me. I decided to wait for an opportunity when my wife wasn't around to talk to her alone. She was looking down awkwardly, avoiding eye contact, and remained silent. "Did you tell your mom you'd rather have your biological father at the wedding?" I asked. She shook her head. So I said, "Then what's going on? Please tell me." And she finally opened her mouth hesitantly and said something shocking.
On the day of the trip with Mom, my biological father was at the airport.
And confessed everything. It seems like on the day of the trip, my daughter, who had been told by her mom that it would just be the two of them, saw him casually reading a newspaper on the chair. It turned out that my wife had secretly planned a trip for the three of them, saying,
"Let's enjoy some family time together."
My daughter felt guilty about me and couldn't fully enjoy the trip, and on top of that, she told her,
"I've decided that your biological father will attend the wedding instead."
When she asked for an explanation, my wife confessed,
"Actually, we've been seeing each other ever since the divorce."
It turned out that, while I was financially supporting my wife, she had been secretly saving the leftover money and sending it to her ex-husband every month, ultimately paying off his debts entirely. She had even been planning to divorce me after our daughter moved out so she could live with him again. On top of that, she contacted my daughter's fiancé for dinner on the day they returned and introduced her ex-husband, saying,
"This is her father."
With tears in her eyes, my daughter said,
"My fiancé also thinks that he's my real dad."
And apologized, admitting that she couldn't tell me the truth since she felt really bad. The truth left me overwhelmed with rage towards my wife, feeling like I was about to lose control. I told her, "Well, the wedding is your decision, so I won't interfere," to which she responded,
"I want you to be there."
Although I wanted to see her as a bride, I couldn't insist on attending, worried that explaining the situation to her fiancé so close to the wedding might jeopardize their marriage. I then anxiously waited for 2 weeks for her decision while I consulted a private investigator to gather evidence of my wife's affair based on her testimony and began preparing for divorce. Before I knew it, the wedding day was just 3 days away. One day, I told my wife I had something important to discuss and called her into the living room. My daughter then said,
"I have something to say to both of you."
And asked to join in. "You can go first," I said. She looked at my wife with a serious expression and said,
"Mom, I don't want you to come to my wedding."
My wife, taken aback, exclaimed,
Why? I'm your real mother. Are you serious?"
But she responded,
"I only want my dad to come. I don't want someone who betrayed him to be there."
seeing my wife looking bummed, muttering,
No, this isn't happening."
I handed her divorce papers, delivering the final blow. I told her, "I've investigated everything. You married me intending to have me pay off your ex-husband's debts, didn't you?" I informed her that I had gathered enough evidence to demand compensation and request the repayment of the money she had been sending to her ex-husband every month. But she said,
"That's impossible. What's the point when his debts have finally been paid off?"
Her unreasonable response left me shocked. I said, "Pack your things and leave. Go to your ex-husband if you want," and promptly kicked her out. 3 days later, the wedding took place, and of course, my wife was absent. At the relatives' table, only my seat was prepared. According to my daughter, when she explained this situation to her fiancé, he said, "It's enough if only your stepdad comes," and showed his understanding. My daughter looked stunning in her wedding dress, and as I reminisced about 20 years, I couldn't stop my tears. Right now, I live alone in the house, but my daughter and her husband visit often. After the divorce, my ex-wife reconciled with her ex-husband, but faced financial hardship due to compensation and repayment. His inability to keep a job left her working relentlessly. She contacted me once and expressed her frustration, saying,
"I want to go back to being a housewife."
But I cut her off, saying, "Why don't you ask your current husband about it?" and hung up. After that, she never called me again. I heard she divorced him for the second time shortly after, ended up taking on his debts herself, and has been working around the clock. As for me, my daughter had her first child. The birth of my grandchild motivated me to prioritize my health, so I started going to the gym. From now on, I want to dedicate myself to my daughter who chose me and my adorable grandchild.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.